what I would call a Passover egg is what I would have you try to draw up, but we're not going to do that. We're not going to do this one in particular. My shadows, and yeah, the Passover egg. Uh, the timeline, I I just have it on the 8th just for poops and giggles. But the 10th is when we choose our lamb. The 14th is when we kill it and cook it. The 15th is when we eat it and burn the leftovers, and the 21st essentially ends. Uh, so we know about the 7 days of the Matzah Fest, the Feast of Unleavened Bread. We know about the 1 day Passover, but you've got to choose that lamb on the 10th. So the entire 12-day event is what would be called the capital P Passover, whereas on the 14th it would be a small p Passover, because Passover just means sacrifice or the sacrifice. It's not like, because it's so
Right.
hard to say Feast of Unleavened Bread. It's so hard to say Feast of Unleavened Bread all the time. It's like we just reduced it down to Passover. Well, you might say Feast of Unleavened Bread, but even then, if you were to do a Google search, a quick Google search of Passover, your first couple hits are gonna have a definition: a 7 or 8 day feast of the Jews or something like. But the
Right.
first words are going to be, yeah, they don't know if it's a 7 or 8 day event, because there's 7 of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, but there is that 1 day of the Passover. And many people think this Passover day is an actual Sabbath, when
Right.
we know that, yeah, you're doing a lot of work on that day. But
Mm-hmm.
that 15th is always going to be a Sabbath, and that 21st
Yeah.
is always going to be a Sabbath. So
Anybody
I
who's
like to,
butchered a deer will be able to tell you that it's not a quick event. I mean, it takes a good hour or two. It is work.
right, and all the Passovers that we went to, that people, it was a Passover Seder. So
Right.
we don't even know what they're talking about. We're like, oh, you guys are doing the meal, and then there's too many added accoutrements. There's the dipping the fingers in the wine, the Passover cedar plate. Quite honestly, I think John the Baptist's head was on a cedar plate. It's got a place for the egg. It's got a place for the. None of that is in Scripture. Um, so this is what I usually like to have people draw out. We're not going to do this though, and I call it a Passover egg, because Passover is so often associated with Easter and Easter egg. But it's what I would like to have you. Oh, I can't even. Let me pull this down and put it in the light. What I would have you, I don't know, either try to write down on a piece of paper, or on a thing like I did here, is is how you figure out Passover for any given year. It's the exact same thing, only in a different form. On the 10th, we choose it, and we keep it up for 4 days. It's called the 4 days of inspection. On the 14th, you kill and cook it. On the 15th, uh, oh, there it is. Uh, you eat it, and whatever's left over, you burn it. You eat and burn it. That is a high Sabbath on the 15th. The 21st is a high Sabbath. Somewhere within those 7 days is going to be a weekly Sabbath. And we're looking for that weekly Sabbath. Oh, when was it this year? Was it here or here? We're looking for that weekly Sabbath, because it's going to, the morrow after that is going to be the that for you can read it. First fruits barley sheaf wave offering. In Exodus 12, we're commanded to eat in haste, coated and girded, would be advised. Exodus 12:13 explains that the blood, a lot of people say, oh, so how come you don't do the blood on the doorpost anymore? The blood on the doorpost and lintel in our KJV is a token, and a token is a one-time user thing. Right, and the name of the first, if you look up Passover, you might find, oh, it's the 14th of Nisan. Okay, KJV makes it clear it's Aviv. The KJV says Abib, but it's an Aviv is a agricultural term on the ripeness of barley, because we need the barley to be ripe enough to do our barley sheaf wave offering. And the priests back in the day, quite honestly, made a little bit of flour out of it on that first fruits day. So if we understand Passover is not just a one-day event, that it's a 12-day event, or it's a Feast of Unleavened Bread, or whatever word you want to call it, modern day thinks it's a 7 or 8-day event, when in fact it's a 12-day event. If we know that, we can go ahead and get started reading if you want to.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, I don't even have my KJV ready. Let's see, on one of your pieces of paper, let's but this is what we're going to be making. On one of your pieces of paper, you can make 5 vertical lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way top to bottom, and then about 10 or 11 horizontal lines, and they don't have to be big squares. You're just all we're going to put in there is numbers, so it doesn't have to be that big. But yeah, if you could make 5 vertical lines and then 10 or 11 horizontal lines, we'll have a nice little grid that we can work with.
Okay, I think I got it.
Oh, already? Goodness. I don't know what to do now. Well, let's see. Okay, so if you have, I'm going to get my answer chart out. I don't like that other chart I have. Yeah, if you have your 5 vertical lines or whatever, in the far upper left-hand corner will be, you can just put the word A, the letter A, or you can type in the word Aviv. That's going to be our, it's going to be Aviv, and then we're going to have Matthew as the next title of a column, Mark, Luke, John, and then let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we can have city over here on the far right one, if you like.
You said Matthew, Mark, Luke, John.
Yeah, just in that order. Because what I did was I just take it straight out of the KJV, like you would read. You would start reading Matthew, and Matthew we start in 21:1, and you just read, and every time we find a different day, we mark it. And then as we get done reading that with Matthew, we'll do the same thing with Mark, and just simply continue reading as you would in your KJV, but we're going to make notes on where a different day is. So if the whole thing has Aviv over here, because these are going to be the dates that we eventually come up with. Aviv 3, Aviv 4, Aviv 5. These are the dates this is the answer book. I can show you how we get that. But just as far as making your chart, this over here will be a V. It's not an M. It'll be A for Aviv, and then Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and then city. Just as a helper, we'll have city over there.
Okay, city in the last one. Okay.
And I'm going to get near my. Excuse me. I'm going to get near my KJV. Oh, doggone it. I was trying to set up all those scrolls on my floor after my shower, and I didn't It took a lot longer than I thought, so I'm not going to do that. Yeah, so let's just go to the Matthew 21:1 and start reading. We were going to read Matthew 21:1 through 21:19, but we are going to have in this, where are we at here? So under, oh, I think I can see actually what you're doing. Let me get my glass.
I've just got Matthew up there just so I can put all the verses in
Right,
Matthew.
Matthew in that column. Yeah, so if we have the, let's see. So this first column will be Aviv. This second column will be Matthew. We're going to skip, we're going to have 2 blank spaces. I can't even, we're going to have 2 blank spaces, and then we're going to start out with 21:1, and we're just going to read through 21:19, and we're going to notice that now in the morning is going to be why we're going to separate. We're right away going to have a different day. We're going to know there's a different day chronologically simply by those words, now in the morning. So let me try. I got to get my glasses. I'm so sorry. I'm so unprepared for this. It's a lot easier in my head.
Yeah, take your time, sir. I'm don't got anything going
Uh, Matthew 21:1, 1 through 17. And when they drew nigh unto Jerusalem, and were come to Bethphage, unto the Mount of Olives, then sent Jesus 2 disciples, saying unto them, Go into the village over against you, and straightway ye shall find an ass tied, and a colt with her. Loose them, and bring them unto me. And if any man say aught unto you, ye shall say, The Lord hath need of them, and straightway he will send them. All this was done that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophet, saying, Tell ye the daughter of Zion, Behold, thy king cometh unto thee, meek, and sitting upon an ass, and a colt, the foal of an ass. And the disciples went and did as Jesus commanded them, and brought the ass and the colt, and put on them their clothes, and they set him thereon. And a very great multitude spread their garments in the way. Others cut down branches from the trees and strawed them in the way. And the multitudes that went before and that followed cried, saying, Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he that come in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest. And when he was come into Jerusalem, all the city was moved, saying, Who is this? And the multitude said, This is Jesus, the prophet of Nazareth of Galilee. And Jesus went into the temple of God, and cast out all them that sold and bought in the temple, and overthrew the tables of the money changers, and the seats of them that sold doves, and said unto them, It is written, My house shall be called the house of prayer, but ye have made it a den of thieves. And the blind and the lame came to him in the temple, and he healed them. And when the chief priests and scribes saw the wonderful things that he did, and the children crying in the temple, and saying, Hosanna to the Son of David, they were sore displeased. And he said unto him, Hearest thou what these say? And the Pharisees, verse 16, the Pharisees are saying, and said unto him, Hearest thou what these say? And Jesus saith unto them, Yeah, have ye never read? Out of the mouth of babes and sucklings thou hast perfected praise. And he left them, and went out of the city into Bethany, and he lodged there. Now in the morning, as he returned into the city, he hungered. And when he saw a fig tree in the way, he came to it, and found nothing thereon but leaves only, and said to it, Let no fruit grow on thee henceforth forever. And presently the fig tree withered away. Okay, so that ends verse 19. But if we notice back at verse 18, it says, Now in the morning. So our first chronological, whatever you want to call it, is going to be Matthew 21:1 through 21:17. 21:1 through 21:17, and it starts out on verse 18, now in the morning. And the reason I have it stopped here, we'll have to see later. So in your notes, you might want to say, why does Mike say that, or you just may want to listen, either way. But we ended at verse 19 on that. So one day was 21, 1 to 17, and then another day was 21, 18 to 19. So let's just keep reading, starting at verse 21:20. And this verse will go all the way, this will go for 5 chapters. But the good news is, most of that is Jesus talking. So I'm just going to read 21:20 to 21:23. So 21:20. I don't know if I should show that while I'm, where are we at here? 21:20. I'll try to hold that as I read it. No, I can't do that. I'll turn it off. And when the disciples saw it, they marveled, saying, "How soon is the fig tree withered away?" Jesus answered and said, "Verily I say unto you, if ye have faith and doubt not, ye shall not only do this which is done to the fig tree, but also if ye shall say unto this mountain, Be thou removed, and be thou cast into the sea, it shall be done. And all things whatsoever ye shall ask in prayer, believing, ye shall receive." And when he was come into the temple, the chief priests and the elders of the people came unto him as he was teaching, and said, "By what authority doest thou these things? And who gave thee this authority?" And Jesus answered and said unto them, "I will also ask you one thing, which if ye tell me, I in likewise will tell you by what authority I do these things. The baptism of John, whence was it? From heaven or of men?" And they reasoned with themselves, saying, "If we shall say from heaven, he will say unto us, Why did ye not believe him? But if we shall say of men, we fear the people, for all hold John as a prophet." And they answered Jesus and said, "We cannot tell." And he said unto them, "Neither tell I you by what authority I do these things. But what think ye? A certain man had 2 sons." Okay, and so he goes on continuing to talk through 26:5. This is all Jesus speaking through all these. The day has not changed. We're going to stop at chapter 26:5. Let me get it on camera. We stop reading at 26:5, but we can, like, for instance, chapter 24. And Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him to show him the buildings of the temple. Okay, so this is, I just want to verify this is still the same day. So let's get all the way. Yeah, it's all red letters in my red letter KJV. Oh, this is interesting. Yes, if you read the entire chapter of 25 of Matthew, it's all red letter. It's all Jesus talking. Matthew 25 is nothing but Jesus talking. And look at this chapter 26. Look at where this guy put a chapter break. "And it came to pass, when Jesus had finished all these sayings, he said unto his disciples, Ye know that after 2 days is the feast of the Passover, and the Son of Man is betrayed to be crucified." So chapter 25 is Jesus speaking, and then they make a chapter break. Chapter 26 starts out, "And it came to pass, when he had finished all these things, he said," why didn't they put that at the end of chapter 25? It's just ridiculous. Excuse me. So anyway, chapter 26:2 is Jesus saying, "Ye know that after 2 days is the feast of the Passover, and the Son of Man is betrayed to be crucified." But we just put a couple more verses in there because for chronology's sake. So here's verse 3 to 5. "Then assembled together the chief priests and the scribes and the elders of the people unto the palace of the high priest, who was called Caiaphas, and consulted that they might take Jesus by subtlety and kill him. But they said, Not on the feast days, lest there be an uproar among the people." So we end this 26:5 because 26:6 we learn later that we're going to skip a day, and we know that on the 9th, verse 26:6, "Now when Jesus was in Bethany, in the house of Simon the leper, there came unto him a woman having an alabaster box of very precious ointment.
And by AT&T 5G, fast, reliable, secure. Good day.
Football. So much for my westerns. Verse 26:6. Now, when Jesus was in Bethany, and we'll find out later that we know that there's an entire day skipped here. But for now, just trust me on this. In the house of Simon the leper, there came unto him a woman having an alabaster box of very precious ointment, and poured it on his head as he sat at meat. But when his disciples saw it, they had indignation, saying, To what purpose is this waste? For this ointment might have been sold for much and given to the poor. When Jesus understood it, he said unto them, Why trouble ye the woman? For she hath wrought a good work unto me. For ye have the poor always with you, but me ye have not always. For in that she hath poured this ointment on my body, she did it for my burial. Verily, I say unto you, wheresoever this gospel shall be preached in the whole world, there shall also this, that this woman hath done, be told for a memorial of her. Then one of the 12, called Judas Iscariot, went unto the chief priests, and said unto them, What ye give me, and I will deliver him unto you. And they covenanted with him for 30 pieces of silver. And from that time forward, they sought opportunity to betray him. And we see that this ends I just ended verse 16. We know that verse 17 is another day, because I'll read it. Verse 17. Now the first day of the feast of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus, saying unto him, Where wilt thou that we prepare for thee to eat the Passover? And he said, Go into the city to such a man, and say unto him, The master saith, My time is at hand, I will keep the Passover at thy house with my disciples. And the disciples did as Jesus had appointed them, and they made ready the Passover. And then we know that, and so that ends verse 19. And then the final one, verse 26, 20. Now when the even was come, and I just put that, we know that evening starts another day. So I just started out verse 20. Now when even was come, okay, so we know that that's another day. But it's still, like Gregorian, same day. He sat down with the 12. And as they did eat, he said, Verily I say unto you, one of you shall betray me. So we know that verse 26:20 is going to be the Last Supper. So we just read Matthew, and we put it all in a column, and we looked only for chronology. And so Matthew in our first column, we're going to skip the 3, we're going to skip the 4, because I'll show you where Mark and Luke pick it up. We went through Jesus getting 2 donkeys, going into Jerusalem, casting out the money changers and the handlers, preaching that it was, and he said, "Don't you'll make my house a den of thieves." But then he stays there and he heals the blind, the lame, and the Pharisees ask him, can you hear what these people are saying? And he says, don't you know from out of the mouth of babes? And then we went on to day 6, well, the 6th of Aviv. It's actually the second day according to Matthew. Now in the morning, and this is where they went by the fig tree, and he cursed it, and presently it withered. And the reason we'll see here shortly, the reason I have this as a different day, and when the disciples saw it, that's a different day. You might have a question on that. As we read Mark, we should have an answer. So for Mark, if you have Aviv and the numbers over here in the first column, Matthew in the second column, the third column is going to be Mark. He's only going to be 11, chapter 11.
Can you show me the numbers on the side again? Like the Aviv days? I want to make sure I've got it all numbered correctly.
Yeah, that M is actually for this column, so that M should be Aviv or A,
right.
And then it's going to be 3. Yeah. And which part did you want? 4?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I had the cutoff in the right places. I got 5. Let's see what number 6 is. 6 is 21, 8 through 19, okay. And then 7 should take us to 26.5, right? Yep.
Oh,
And,
yep, good man, good man.
and then 8 is blank. Okay, good. And that means 9 would be 26, 6 through 16. Alright. Then that would make 10 the 26, 17. And then the 11th would be the 26, 20, right? Okay. Alright, cool. Alright, at least I got it set up, so hopefully I can just get everything to line up and mark on the correct days.
Yeah, once you do that, like by hand or something, it's a lot easier to flip back and forth through whatever you're doing.
Right.
So your first column should be a V. Like I say, that M is for just whatever. The first column, second column. So the third column is Mark, and that's going to be the very first. Even though we skipped in Matthew the first two, Mark will be on a V3,
Okay.
and it's just verses 1 to 10. I'll go ahead and read. And when they came nigh to Jerusalem, unto Bethphage and Bethany, at the Mount of Olives, he sendeth forth two of his disciples, and saith unto them, Go your way into the village over against you, and as soon as ye be entered into it, ye shall find a colt tied, wherein never man sat. Loose him, and bring him. And if any man say unto you, Why do ye this? Say ye that the Lord hath need of him, and straightway he will send him hither. And they went their way, and found the colt tied by the door without, in a place where two ways met. And they loose him. And certain of them that stood there and said unto them, what do ye, loosing the colt? And they said unto them, Even as Jesus had commanded, and they let them go. And they brought the colt to Jesus, and cast their garments on him, and he sat upon him. And many spread their garments in the way, and others cut down branches off the trees, and strawed them in the way. And they that went before, and they that followed, cried, saying, Hosanna, blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. Blessed be the kingdom of our father David that cometh in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest. That is what we would consider one day, and hopefully we'll see why. And so this is so hard. So that was verses 1 through 10, and let me just read verse 11 to you. And Jesus entered into Jerusalem and into the temple, and when he had looked round about upon all things, and now the eventide was come, he went out into Bethany with the 12. So that's an entire day of in like one verse. He went into Jerusalem, looked around, and when eventide was come, even, that's another day. Okay, so that's why we have 11:11 here. And when eventide was come, making it another day, we're going to leave this blank for Mark, because when eventide was come on that day, that makes anything after that, it's already talking about this day.
Gotcha.
So verse 12 starts out, and in the morning. So that's why we're skipping an entire day here, because the 11th, it was a day trip to Jerusalem, maybe even spying it out. He totally chilled, looked around at all things, and when eventime was come, he went out to Bethany. And in the morning, that's why we skipped today. Let me just read Mark 11:12 to 19. And on the morrow, when they were come from Bethany, he was hungry. And seeing a fig tree afar off, having leaves, he came, if haply he might find anything thereon. And when he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for the time of figs was not yet. And Jesus answered and said unto them, and said unto it, No man eat fruit of thee hereafter forever. And his disciples heard it. And they come to Jerusalem, and Jesus went into the temple, and began to cast out them that sold and bought in the temple, and overthrew the tables of the money changers, and the seats of them that sold doves, and would not suffer that any man should carry any vessel through the temple. And he taught, saying unto them, Is it not written, My house shall be called of all nations the house of prayer? But ye have made it a den of thieves. And the scribes and chief priests heard it, and sought how they might destroy him, for they feared him, because all the people was astonished at his doctrine. And when even was come, he went out of the city. So that's ends our verse 19. And when even was come, he went out of the city. Verse 20 picks up, and in the morning. And in the morning, as they passed by, they saw the fig tree dried up from the roots. Go ahead. Go ahead. You're fine. I gotta get a drink. Yeah, let me just. You skipped there, even though I got writing there. That's just an explanation. We skip. Yeah, 12, yeah, yeah. Yes, through 14:2. And yeah, go ahead. Verse 11:20. And in the morning, as they passed by, they saw the fig tree dried up by the roots. And Peter, calling to remembrance, said unto him, Master, behold, the fig tree which thou cursest is withered away. And Jesus answered, saying unto them, Have faith in God, for verily I say unto you that whosoever shall say unto this mountain, Be thou removed, and be thou cast into the sea, and shall not doubt in his heart, but shall believe that those things which he saith shall come to pass, he shall have whatsoever he saith. Therefore I say unto you, what things soever ye desire, when ye pray, believe that ye shall receive them, and ye shall have them. And when ye stand praying, forgive, if ye have aught against any, that your Father also which is in heaven may forgive you your trespasses. But if ye do not forgive, neither will your Father which is in heaven forgive your trespasses. And they come again to Jerusalem, and as he was walking in the temple, there come to him the chief priests and the scribes and the elders, and saying unto him, By what authority doest thou these things? I'm going to put that on cam just so you can see. It's the same thing. By what authority? Doest, and Jesus answered and said unto them, I will also ask of you one question, and answer me, and I will tell you by what authority I do these things. The baptism of John, was it from heaven or of men? Answer me. And they reasoned with themselves, saying, If we shall say from heaven, he shall say, Why did ye not believe him? But if we say of men, they feared the people, for all men counted John that he was a prophet indeed. And they answered and said unto Jesus, We cannot tell. And Jesus answered, saying unto them, Neither do I tell you by what authority I do these things. And chapter 12, he starts his red letter, chapter 12, verse 1. And he began to speak unto them in parables. A certain man planted a vineyard, and it goes on for 2 chapters, and it ends in chapter 14:2, which is funny, the same thing. All of chapter 13 is him speaking. It's all red letters. Even though chapter 13 says, and starts out by saying, And as he went out of the temple, one of his disciples said, Master, look at the stones. It's still the same day. Jesus speaks in all red throughout all Mark chapter 13, and Mark chapter 14 starts out. After 2 days and this is not Jesus speaking, this is Mark's account, Mark's words, whereas in Matthew it was Peter, it was Jesus's words in red. This is just Matthew's recording, but he's saying the same thing. After 2 days was the feast of the Passover and of unleavened bread, and the chief priests and the scribes sought how they might take him by craft and put him to death. But they said, Not on the feast day, lest there be an uproar of the people. And we see we're gonna that ends the 7th. There's a skip on the 8th, and verse 3 in chapter 14 is going to be the 9th. We'll find out later it's the 9th. But verse 3 starts reading, And being in Bethany, in the house of Simon the leper, as he sat at meat, there came a woman having an alabaster box of ointment of spikenard, very precious, and she brake the box and poured it on his head. And there were some that had indignation within themselves and said, Why was this waste of the ointment made? For it might have been sold for more than 300 pence and have been given to the poor. and they murmured against her. And Jesus said, Let her alone. Why trouble ye her? She hath wrought a good work on me. For ye have the poor with you always, and whensoever ye will, this is interesting, for ye have the poor with you always, and whensoever ye will, ye may do them good. That also means apparently on the Sabbath. It would be my only teaching. But me ye have not always. She hath done what she could. She is come aforehand to anoint my body to the burying. Verily I say unto you, wheresoever this gospel shall be preached throughout the whole world, this also that she hath done shall be spoken of for a memorial of her. And Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went to the chief priests to betray him unto them. And when they heard it, they were glad and promised to give him money. And he sought how he might conveniently betray him. So that in verse 12, in the first day of unleavened bread. So we see that verse 12 is a different day, and it happens to be the exact next day. And the first day of unleavened bread, when they killed the Passover, his disciples said unto him, Where wilt thou that we go and prepare that thou mayest eat the Passover? And he sendeth forth 2 of his disciples and said, Go over into the city, and there shall meet you a man bearing a pitcher of water. Follow him, and wheresoever he shall go in, say ye to the goodman of the house, The master saith, Where is the guest chamber, where I shall eat the Passover with my disciples? And he will show you a large upper room furnished and prepared. There make ready for us. And his disciples went forth and came into the city and found as he had said unto them, and they made ready the Passover. That ends our verse 16, and I'll just show you real quick. Verse 17 starts out, and in the evening, it's another day, and in the evening he cometh with the 12, and as they sat and did eat, Jesus said, Verily I say unto you, one of you which eateth with me shall betray me. So whether that evening, was on the 10th, or you know what I mean, either way, it's going to end up being another. It's going to end up being another day. Yeah. And we'll just go on with Luke if you want to. Yeah. Yes, that's our tone. Leavened bread. And it doesn't make any sense. Right, he gets that all. Right, that's what everybody's done throughout history. They try to think Passover is a one-day event when they don't understand that it could be talking about the entire 12-day event. That when you go, if you have, yeah, you're going to have to get there by the 10th to choose your. You're going to have to get there by the 10th to choose your lamb, and that's exactly what they're doing. Because it doesn't make any sense. And the first day of unleavened, listen to Mark. And the first day of unleavened bread. Okay, there's the first day of unleavened bread. When they killed the Passover, what? That's the day before. The first day of unleavened bread when they killed the Passover. Right. So if you look at it like, oh, the first day of unleavened bread, that whole event when they kill the Passover. If you look at it like that, right. Yeah, that's exactly what the Catholic John. Yeah, because John, that's what the Catholics jumped on with John. There's a, I don't know where it is on the, uh, where it would be on. This is how the Catholic. This is how the Catholics come up with theirs. Jesus says somewhere in John, because it's not really on my chart. He says, "Oh, I've desired to eat this Passover with you." And it's like, oh, yeah, there we go. He's at a Passover Seder. But the next line, the very next line says, "Hey, but I'm going to die and it's not going to happen." And it's like, oh my gosh, just read the next line. Come on, Dirty. All right, continuing. Um, Luke 19, Luke, for people that say you're not going to figure out the chronology because the gospel writers obviously did not write these gospels in chronological order. I kind of understand that, but Luke, at the very beginning of his book, not chapter 19, but chapter 1, I think it is, he says specifically, I'm going to try and write a good chronology. So you're lying right away saying they did not write it in chronology. But anyway, Luke 19 starts out, and that'll be Luke goes right. Luke will be 19:28 to 36. That'll be on the third as well. I don't. Let me just read it, and I'll show you, so we can get through this. 19. Oh, where are we at? 28. No, 19. Oh yeah, 28. And when he had thus spoken, he went before, ascending up to Jerusalem. And it came to pass, when he was come nigh to Bethphage and Bethany, at the called the Mount of Olives, he sent two of his disciples, saying, Go ye into the village over against you, in the which at your entering ye shall find a colt tied, whereon yet never man sat. Loose him, and bring him hither. And if any man ask you, Why do ye loose him? Thus shall ye say unto him, Because the Lord hath need of him. And they that were sent went their way, and found even as he had said unto them. And as they were loosing the colt, the owners thereof said unto them, Why loose ye the colt? And they said, The Lord hath need of him. And they brought him to Jesus, and they cast their garments upon the colt, and they set Jesus thereon. And as he went, they spread their clothes in the way. That's how I would end that day of Luke. And we're going to skip a day because this 1937, and when he was come nigh, even now at the descent of the Mount of Olives, the whole multitude of the disciples began to rejoice and praise God with a loud voice for all the mighty works that they had seen, saying, Blessed be the King that cometh in the name of the Lord. Let me get my camera off here so I can look down. Saying, Blessed be the King that cometh in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven and glory in the highest. And some of the Pharisees from among the multitude said unto him, Master, rebuke thy disciples. And he answered and said unto them, I tell you that, if these shall hold their peace, the stones would immediately cry out. And when he was come near, he beheld the city, and wept over it, saying, If thou hadst known, even thou, at least in this thy day, the things which belong unto thy peace, but now they are hid from thine eyes. For the days shall come upon thee, that thine enemies shall cast a trench about thee, and compass thee round, and keep thee on every side, and shall lay thee even with the ground. And thy children within thee, and they shall not leave in thee one stone upon another, because thou knewest not the time of thy visitation. And he went into the temple, and began to cast out them that sold therein, and them that bought, saying unto them, It is written, My house is the house of prayer, but ye have made it a den of thieves. And he taught daily in the temple, but the chief priests and the scribes and the chief of the people sought to destroy him, and could not find what they might do, for all the people were very attentive to him. Chapter 20 starts out, which is a different day. Chapter 20 starts out, and it came to pass that on one of those days he taught the people in the temple. So just to clarify, the Luke 19, 28 to 36 was, it ended with the people spreading their garments. We're going to skip a day, and I'll show you why. And even now, at the descent of the Mount of Olives, okay, and then the entire chapter 19 ends, and so verse 20 started out on one of those teaching days. So it could have been this day, it could have been far away, but we see that it matches up. On one of those teaching days, they're going to ask them by what authority, and this is also going to match up with the exact words of Mark and Matthew, by what authority. And since we know those are all the exact words, we know those are the exact same day. But it came to pass on one of those teaching days, as he taught the people in the temple and preached the gospel, the chief priests and the scribes came unto him with the elders and spake unto him, saying, Tell us, by what authority doest thou these things? Or who is he that gave thee this authority? And he answered and said unto them, I will also ask you one thing, and answer me. The baptism of John, was it from heaven or of men? And they reasoned within themselves, saying, If we shall say from heaven, he will say, Why then believe ye not him not? And if we say of men, all the people will stone us, for they be persuaded that John was a prophet. And they answered that they could not tell whence it was. And Jesus said unto them, Neither tell I you by what authority I do these things. Then began he to speak to the people this parable. A certain man planted a vineyard. Okay, and then it goes on, and it ends and again he talks and talks for the rest of the day. Let me get my camera back on here, all the way up to chapter 22, verse 2, because verse 20 started out with one of those teaching days. He says, by what authority? So it goes all the way through to verse, and the same thing. They do a chapter break, like after Jesus gets talking, they do a chapter break. Now the feast of unleavened bread drew nigh, which is called the Passover. Is it?
Right.
Yeah. So there's a whole bunch of different names we can use to describe this 12-day event, and if you keep calling it Passover, you're going to think it's a one-day event. So the feast drew nigh, which is called the Passover, and the chief priests and scribes sought how they might kill him, for they feared the people. And I just 22:3, it starts out. Then entered Satan into Judas, surnamed Iscariot, being of the number of the 12, and he went his way.
Pause real quick. Sorry, my wife is messaging me and.
Oh no, I heard it. I got to take a drink.
Okay. Alright, maybe I'm ready, but I feel like I'm behind. We're in 20, but the last thing I wrote down was 19, so I need to figure out. I need to figure out what day the chapter 20 starts on.
Excuse me. Luke, chapter 20. You said.
Yeah, so
There we
6
go.
is blank, so we're on 7. Okay. So we've got 20, 1 and 2.
Oh well, that's all one day. I'm sorry, I have it divided up.
Right.
Because
And
because
22, 2.
And then
Okay.
skip a day.
Skip another day. And then 9 is 22, 3 through 6. Okay.
But yeah, 22, 3 through 6, Judas Iscariot, and he went his way and communed with the chief priests and captains, how he might betray unto them. And they were glad and covenanted to give him money. And he promised and sought opportunity to betray him unto them in the absence of the multitude. So yeah, verse 7 starts out, then came the day of unleavened bread when the Passover must be killed. So that's we have that on the 10th, because again, let's read that. That's some funky words.
Yeah. No, I followed it. Just,
Oh, good.
yeah.
Yeah. Then came the day of unleavened bread. When the Passover. Yeah, the same
Yep.
words as.
Yep. I know what that means.
And they followed. Let's see. Oh yeah, verse 13. And they went and found as he said unto them, and they made ready the Passover. And then I just have verse 14 being that night, the Last Supper, matching up with everybody else, because it starts out, and when the hour was come, he sat down, and the 12 apostles with him, and he said unto them, with the desire, oh, here it is in Luke, with desire I have desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. So yeah, the Catholics will say, there you go, it's the last, it's a Passover Seder.
Right.
For I say unto you, I will not any more eat thereof until fulfill. Yeah, and he took the cup. So that's clearly the Last Supper.
Yep.
So what we see with the funky wording of Matthew, Jesus in his own words says, after 2 days is the feast of the Passover. There is no feast of Passover. There's a feast of unleavened bread. So clearly the authors, whoever. And then again, now the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, it's just some funky wording. I wrote this on my wall because in case I ever get a call, I wanted to be able to quote it over the phones. But it's also here. They
I mean, it says write it on your doorposts and everything else. So I mean,
thank you.
I don't have anything against this. Like, people might call it graffiti or whatever. I call it taking scripture seriously. I have no problem with people.
That's awesome.
Like, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if there was somebody out there who literally like carved every commandment into their doorpost. Like it wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, so these guys all match up with the exact same words. By what authority do you do this? By what authority? By what authority? Hey, I'm not going to tell you unless you answer me about John. They couldn't answer. Those exact same words tell us it's the exact same day. And then again, yes, after 2 days is the feast of the Passover. It's got to be the 7th, because after 2 days, it's going to be the 10th when you got to choose your lamb. After 2 days is going to be the feast of Passover and of unleavened bread. And well, this guy just says that it drew nigh, but since it matches up with the exact words of what authority, we know that's the exact same
Yeah.
day.
No, you've put in some work here. This is impressive.
Good. Let's just hit John 12:1 and get this over with. Excuse me. So after I say all that, now it's going to sound like I'm going to lie to you. John chapter 12. Verse 1, then Jesus, 6 days before the Passover. Okay, so if it's 6 days before the Passover, which I just convinced you, that's the Passover, but this is the capital P Passover. What is it, 6 days before the 10th? Is it 6 days before the 14th? Or is it 6 days before the 15th?
Yeah,
Well, since
that is a good question.
Yeah, since the King James is pretty good, they used the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is called the Passover, with a capital P in Luke. Thank goodness for the King James, they're consistent. There's a small p here. Then Jesus 6 days before the 14th. Well, what's 6 days before the 14th? It's the 8th.
Okay.
So these brothers, this is why I say this is the Holy Spirit puzzle chart, because these brothers are all talking about all this time. What even if you squish these, you don't agree with me and you want to pull these guys down, Or you say, this is stupid, Mike, I want to pull this down and match. No matter what you do, they all coincide again on the 7th. And John picks it up on the 8th. But there's an oiling, and we just read that there's an oiling. What the heck's going on here? Don't forget, Matthew, it's at Bethany at Simon the leper's, and it's on his head. Mark, it's at Simon the leper's, it's on his head. Luke, well, wherever it was, it's probably, whatever. But this one, this is his feet. She didn't take a whole pound of ointment, expensive, and dump it on his feet. You wouldn't use that much. So anyway, and it's at Lazarus's. These guys were at Simon's. It's both are in Bethany. But I'm just sorry to say it's a different day.
Different house, same town.
And John says it was at a supper. It's an actual different Greek word. And all three of these guys say while he sat at meat. When Judas said the 300 pence thing, which John does record, it's when he was at meat. So let's just read John 12, 1 through 3 real quick. Then Jesus, 6 days before the Passover, came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, which had been dead, whom he raised from the dead. There they made him a supper, and Martha served. But Lazarus was, this is funny, but Lazarus, okay, remember stinky Lazarus? That's why they're saying, but Lazarus.
Right.
But Lazarus was one of them that sat at the table with him. Go ahead, and is that a call you need to take? Verse 3. But Lazarus was one of them that sat at the table with him. Then took Mary a pound of ointment of spikenard, very costly, and anointed the feet of Jesus, and wiped his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with the odor of the ointment. Thank goodness, the house was filled with the odor of the ointment. So anyway, that's why I have that separated. Verse 4 starts out, then saith one of his disciples. So if you're reading this, you might think that Judas Iscariot is going to say, we could have sold that money for 300 pence. When she probably did not use the whole pound on his feet, and clearly it was at Lazarus, as we know it's a different location, where she broke it. She broke it over his, no, she broke the thing after dumping it on his head. So when Judas is complaining...
Well, the alabaster just means it's like a bottle that doesn't reclose. You know, like once you open it, you have to use all of it. You know,
oh,
nice. You
nice.
have to like break the top off. You know, like it's a glass sealed container, and you literally have to break the glass, and then there's no way to put the glass back together.
Yeah, we had that when we were trying to do in vitro fertilization. They had little jars with a little nugget of medicine in it, and there was no top. You just broke the glass. It's weird. But verse 4, then saith one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, which should betray him, why was not this ointment sold for 300 pence and given to the poor? This he said, not that he cared for the poor, but because he was a thief and had the bag and bare what was put therein. Then Jesus said, let her alone. Against the day of my bearing hath she kept this. For the poor always ye have with you, but me ye have not always. Much people of the Jews therefore knew that he was there, and they came not for Jesus' sake only, but that might see Lazarus also, whom he had raised from the dead. But the chief priests consulted that they might put Lazarus also to death, because that by reason of him many of the Jews went away and believed on Jesus. That ends verse 11, and I'll just show you real quick that verse 12 starts out with, on the next day. So on the next day, it matches up exactly. This is Aviv 10, it's a Sabbath. On the next day, much people that were come to the feast, when they heard that Jesus was coming to Jerusalem, took branches of palm trees and went forth to meet him and cried, Hosanna, blessed is the King of Israel. Wait a minute. I thought we had a triumphal entry way back here at Mark and Luke and Matthew. What the heck's going on? We can't have 3 triumphal entries, can we? Yeah, that's my whole point. This is a Jerusalem triumphal entry. This Matthew is a Bethany triumphal entry. Quite honestly, Let me just read Matthew 21
I
again.
feel like a noob here. I don't actually know where Bethany's at. I'm assuming it's close to Jerusalem.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Just the southern part of Jerusalem, the Temple Mount is the southern steps, and just like half a mile south of there, to this day, you can see Lazarus's grave. That's where Bethany was.
Okay, so I
Bethphage,
mean, like Bethany is still in Jerusalem. It's like the city of David, or it's more of like a section
it's a,
inside of town, I guess.
no, no,
Is
no.
that
It's
better?
a completely separate city, but so close. It's just right there.
Yeah, stone's
It,
throw away or whatever. Gotcha.
exactly. And the same with Bethphage. The Mount of Olives is just east of Jerusalem in the Temple Mount. And just on nobody really knows where it is, but it's so close. It's either on the top of the Mount of Olives or just on the other side of the Mount of Olives. They're all so very close that you would right. They're all very close. But let's read verse 21 in Matthew again, because if we think that Matthew 21:1 is the Jerusalem triumphal entry, we see that Mark has a John, excuse me, has a better idea of that. Matthew 21 verse 1. And when they drew nigh unto Jerusalem, and were come to Bethphage, unto the Mount of Olives, then sent Jesus two disciples. Let me read that again. And when they drew nigh unto Jerusalem, okay, so they're not in Jerusalem, and were come to Bethphage, and were come to Bethphage. It sounds like they have already been to Bethphage. When they
Right.
drew nigh to Jerusalem, and were come to Bethphage, unto the Mount of Olives, then sent Jesus two disciples. See how it makes better sense?
Oh
That
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So check this part out. He told the disciples, "Go do this." Verse 4 in Matthew 21, verse 4. All this was done. All what? All he did was send two disciples into a city to get all that was done? No, he's talking about all this was done because he had already done Bethphage. This is Bethany. This is Bethphage, triumphal entry. This is the Bethany triumphal entry. Yes, all this was done. We noted, I don't know if you noticed, Mark and Luke gave no prophecy fulfillment. They never said all this was done to fulfill this prophecy. Matthew does say all this was done, but then he continues, all what was done. All this was done that might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the prophet, saying, and this is directly from Zechariah 9:9. Tell ye the daughter of Zion, behold, thy king cometh to thee. Okay, Matthew is there's a contradiction, there's a controversy here. Why did he leave out half of the prophecy? The prophecy says, shout, O ye daughters of Zion, rejoice, daughters of Jerusalem. He left out daughters of Jerusalem. Well, he left out daughters of Jerusalem because he hadn't done it yet. Until so he's 100% right. Yeah, to fulfill, and Mark and Luke, because a daughter of Zion is not a human. Zion is a mountain range or a mountain where David built his palace. A daughter of that mountain would be Bethphage or Bethany or any little city associated with it. So yes, Matthew is correct. Tell ye the daughter of Zion, behold, thy king cometh unto thee, meek, and sitting upon an ass, and a colt, the foal of an ass. That's exactly word for word, except for the Jerusalem part, of Zechariah 9:9, and it does sound like two different donkeys. Exactly, but not ridden on one triumphal entry. He picked up two donkeys here, a mom and a colt, and he rode one of them. Mark and Luke record one donkey, and he rode it. That's because it's a different day. It's not because they're stupid and they didn't know if Jesus went to get one donkey or two donkeys, or maybe they're just different witnesses accounts, and they weren't there with Jesus, and these are just different witnesses. When you witness a car accident, 4 different people, they're going to have
Right.
4 different
Yeah.
witnesses. Put a little trust in these guys that maybe they wrote the exact thing and you're misreading it. So these guys give
No. Like, no. We are the perfect humans of God. There's no way we're misreading the text.
exactly, we're misinterpreting. And the only you might my battery's going to die. You might want to do this on your own time. These words are the exact same words. When I did when I tried to, I don't even know if you'll see this, but when I did it day by day, like this is what happened on Aviv 3, the Bethpage triumphal entry, and I had Mark and Luke. You can Mark is in red, Luke is in black. It's the exact same words. The exact same words. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
slight, a very
That's
very
really
slight variant.
Yeah. I like how you put this together. This is great.
Good, thank you. Because my battery's going to die. So just to verify, and then along about verse 13, chapter 13 in John, he says when his hour has come, and so we know that that's the 11th. So if we look, and I think you might have had a question on why the fig tree was on 2 different days, because in this account, Jesus went over there and he saw the fig tree, cursed it, and presently it withered. Okay, that doesn't mean it turned to dust and blew away.
Right.
The
Yeah.
leaves, they're all over this. He says leaves, leaves, leaves. Um, and his disciples saw it. So, but his disciples saw it the next day,
Right.
because over
Yeah.
here
Yeah.
it's
No.
leaves,
No.
leaves,
I
leaves,
caught
leaves.
that whenever you were reading through it.
Oh,
It
good,
did make it
good.
sound like it was a different day whenever they saw it. Like
And
the
that's why I
language
call
they
it a
used.
shade. Yeah, that's why I call it a shade tree, because he, even once he does go into Jerusalem and preaches about it, he says, "Consider the fig tree or any tree. When you see its leaves, you know that summer is nigh." So we don't even care that it's a fig tree. The whole point is there's leaves on it for shade, and he curses it, and it took a 24-hour period for that shade tree to disappear, which Matt aligns perfectly with Jonah, who sat on the east side of of Nineveh, pouting that the people had repented, and God grew a gourd to give him shade, but a worm. Jesus called himself the worm.
Right. Yeah.
God
Yeah.
sent the worm to Jonah and ate up that gourd in a day, in a 24-hour period. So yeah, it's beautiful that it fits out there. And the same with the feet anointing. Yes, at Lazarus is at a supper, she did his feet, probably because Lazarus was stinking up the place. And then, but when Judas said, "I could have sold that," that's going to be a different day, because we know that Judas said it at a different location, at Simon's, while they sat at meat, and he could have sold it for 300 pence. I think that's everything. Well, quite honestly, the donkey that these guys pick in Mark and Luke is a donkey that has never been rid. That is a donkey you can. This is a Sabbath. That is a donkey you can ride on the Sabbath. He legally rode a donkey because it did not do any work to require rest on the Sabbath. It had never been
Right.
rid. It's
That's
totally awesome.
interesting.
So if the third is a Sabbath, the 10th is a Sabbath. This is where Michael Rood knows that it was the 10th was a Sabbath. But he'll go on to say that he then left and went out to Bethany and Bethphage. No, when you choose your lamb on the 10th, we went over I don't know where that paperwork went to, but when you choose your lamb when you choose your lamb on the 10th, you keep it up for 4 days. So if you choose Jesus on the 10th and then let him go back out to Bethany, and you've just broken the shadow picture prophecy of what Passover is all about. He did not follow the rules of a Passover lamb by being inspected for 4 days, 3 or 4 days. So so the only question that people may have is, oh, if this is all true and he was in jail for 3 or 4 days, how come we don't see that? And how come it says, Peter denied him 3 times right before his arrest? I've got answers for that. I've got a whole
Yeah,
I've got a
that
whole
was
bunch
that
of
was
answers.
really good. I actually saw that the other day. I was reading it and it was like, he told him, "Hey, stay up and pray with me," and he comes back and they're asleep and it's like the first time he woke him up and then he leaves and he
Yeah,
comes back and it's like
he
the
called
second
back.
time they're asleep and then
Yeah.
he leaves and comes back and the third time they were asleep. Like, yeah, that was amazing.
He literally denied him 3 times doing that, but he also did it a second. He'd also did it another time by over the course of 3 days. It's not the wording is so difficult. But no, that's a whole nother teaching. It's like if you're going to jump on that, I will be the first to. And if you're going to jump on that and say, Mike, this can't be true because uh, we know that he was denied or whatever. I would say, aren't you the same person that just told me that these were not written in chronological order? So don't even come at me saying you know better than me because you no. This is how it went down. It fulfills
Right.
all the prophecy. It does it
It
perfectly in exact order, and it blows out the Catholic Church's 15th of the Eve Last Supper. It blows out the Protestant 14th of the Eve Last Supper, and it should let the Jews know that the exact same book they've been reading all these years saying it's fake is real. It demolishes all 3 major religions. That's
right.
why I think it's so important.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Whew. All right, handsome.
There is
I
a
gotta
lot
take a
of
break,
toes getting
man.
stepped on here. Yeah, take a break, plug your phone in, whatever you
Oh,
gotta do, man.
oh, that was so fun. Oh, let me just show a camera. Yeah, there's my. I didn't get to lay them out in the proper order. I just wanted to show you that that's exactly what I did. I put them. I copy pasted, printed all the text with all the verses on the left, and then I made notes. He's nigh unto Bethphage and Bethany. One colt, for instance. But yeah, I put it all in scroll form. Uh, but like I didn't have time to lay it out perfect. I just wanted to show you that that's what I did to try to figure out. I got tired of flipping through the pages back and forth. Because look at this. We got the triumphal entry of Bethphage. He goes to Jerusalem and looks around. Okay, and then Matthew picks it up. This is even chronological. Just it's like It's like there's 4 guys getting interviewed. Anyway, Matthew picks it up with the Bethany triumphal entry. Even now at the descent of the Mount of Olives. So everybody thinks, oh, he's coming to Jerusalem. How cool. But no, he's even now at the descent of Mount of Olives. He's going to Bethany after getting the 2 donkeys. And then, yes, he's leaving Jerusalem and excuse me, Bethany and going into Jerusalem. It's not a different day. But as he's approaching Jerusalem, he weeps and says, "Oh, had you not known the time of your visitation?" Again, Matthew picks it up, um, uh, saying, "Yeah." After Matthew picks it up, after he's weeping, he's entering into Jerusalem, and all the crowd was moved. If you're just reading Matthew, why was all the crowd moved? What did he do? All he did was get a donkey. Oh, they're all moved. They're all moved, saying, "Who is this?" And the text says, "Oh, this is Jesus of Nazareth, the prophet of Nazareth." No, this is Jesus, the prophet, spoken of by Moses. That's how important that is. And then he goes out, and when he gets
Yeah, yeah,
into,
he's the prophet like unto Moses in that he teaches the exact opposite of Moses. That's right.
yeah, yeah, and when he gets into the
Uh,
temple,
I just I wonder about people whenever they suggest things like that. It's like, why are we specifying that this prophet is going to be like Moses? I think people are mistaken whenever they say, "Oh, it just means that he does signs, miracles, and wonders, and he teaches." It doesn't mean that they teach the same thing. I mean, surely that like that totally can't be it. Like just it's mind-boggling how they think that Jesus is somehow like Moses, but they have nothing in common.
yeah, because they asked John, are you the Messiah? And he said, no. And they asked him, are you that prophet? Not a prophet. Are you that prophet? They were looking for a specific prophet. And he said, no, I am not that prophet.
Right. I mean, I
I
can see
can't,
if they were asking whether or not he was Elijah and all that good stuff, you know, like
or
the.
Elijah,
But
yeah.
yeah, you know, like they were looking for a prophet or the prophet, and they were looking for Elijah, you know.
In John, I think I can't find it in my notes right now, but yeah, 2 times somebody says, this is of a surety that prophet. The people are saying, this is of a surety that prophet. It's a specific prophet. But I just wanted to point out that when he goes in on the fifth, he casts out the money changers. He overturns the tables of the money changers. It's got money on it. But the people that sell doves are going to have vessels of doves on their table. So he doesn't overturn their tables. He overturns their seats. And then
Right.
he said, you have made my house a den of thieves. And Luke verifies, you say he said, you have made my house a den of thieves. But then he continues on that same day to heal the many blind and the lame, and he makes that babes comment.
Right.
So we
Yeah.
see on the next day when he does the exact same thing, overturning the money changers. He taught. He didn't
Yeah,
say
and I
you
mean,
have
obviously
made.
the Pharisees are impressed because surely they've seen these people that he's healed before. Like, I'm pretty, I
Right.
would bet money that those people have been to the temple to try and get healing, and were not able to get healing, and then all of a sudden, boom, here Jesus
He
is
does.
healing people. You know, I
So
doubt
so
these are unrecognizable people that he's healed. Like, I'm sure that the whole community knew who these people were.
Yeah, he said the den of thieves one day. He taught den of thieves the next. But don't forget, he overthrew the tables of the money changers, and he overturned the seats of those that sold doves. So can you imagine the people that sold doves
Right?
carrying
Was the
their
guy
doves
in the
away?
chair when he turned it over? You know,
Right.
like
So,
that's what
so
I
why
want to
did he
know.
say on? So that explains why he says the next day, no vessel. I put vessel in there in remembrance of Chekhov. Where are the
That's great.
nuclear vessels? Uh, he said no vessel carrying. It's clear. It's clearly a different day. And when even yeah, but no, I thank you for that. This felt so good to get through it finally, and it's on tape. You can simply go to the chart and try to debunk me without even calling me.
Right.
You'll have your own answers right there, but you're
Yeah.
going to have to look for the nuances. You're going to have to look for just these slight differences that you never really noticed before. But yeah, let me take a break or not a break, but let me end this, and we can, chat later or something. But I'm gonna get a drink and chill. This was so much fun. Thank you, thank you. Did you have anything or
No, I'm not going to answer a matter before I've studied it out. I'm not going to be a fool.
we were
No,
just
this has
reading
been
that last
great.
night
This is great.
out of the book of Sirach. Yeah, don't answer a fool until you look into what he's saying. Yeah, that's
Or he who
genius.
answers a matter before he has heard the conclusion is a fool, or I can't. Yeah, I'm butchering it, but you meant what I knew.